A few months ago, in a Skype cast far, far away. After credits. Episode 7 of Forced Revival. Aaron Skyseska has vanished. In his absence, the sinister First Order has risen from the ashes of the Disney Empire and will not rest until Skyseska, the last film podcaster, has been destroyed. With the support of Patreon, General Nicola Mendeza leads a brave resistance. She is desperate to find her co-host and gain his help in restoring peace to the Star Wars fanbase, so she has sent Ryan to go look for him. And while you're waiting for his return, you can go to patreon.com/evacstation. For less than the cost of replacing that wall of computers you blew up in a fit of rage, you can support this show. You can get bonus episodes, early releases, and a portion of the map that may lead to our whereabouts. No promises. Again, that's patreon.com/evacstation. And may the Force be with you. I used to wonder that myself. Thought it was all a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. A podcast holding together good and evil, the dark side, the light. Craziest thing, it's true. The films, the jokes, all of it. It's true. I'm your host, A. Ray Waseska, and with me today, I've got Kylo Ryan.
I hate how whiny my voice sounds. I
mean... welcome to the After Credits Cast, the only film podcast that will murder every single thing you love with puns. Because that's what we do. You can follow us down below in the description. We're on all sorts of platforms: Patreon, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Peepa, and Podcast Addict. If you can find us there and also review our show, it helps us out a lot. You can also contact us directly via social media. That's including Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. You can send us stuff there. You can also reach out to us on our lovely email. Ryan, what is that email?
That's not how the Force works! Excuse me. That is evacstation@gmail.com.
How does the Force... How does Force work?
That's a whole ass podcast by itself, so... maybe we'll do that as a bonus podcast if we get enough Patreons to request it.
Indeed.
I'll give an in-depth, like 1 hour kind of seminar on how the Force works.
You heard it there, folks. If you want to know how the Force Force works, go to patreon.com/evacstation. Put some money towards that Ryan show we're going to be doing. An episode a day for a podcast for Forces Away or something. I don't know. Anyway, before we get into what you're watching, I have a new segment I'm throwing out there. It's called Making Ryan Mad in 2 minutes or less.
Golly. All right. Let me brace myself.
So this is something that came out just recently, and I know it's going to steam Ryan up a little bit. It's going to steam him up. But I couldn't, in good faith, not talk about this. It's not a what you're watching. It's like a news blurb. So recently, Ryan, within the past week or two, there have been some announcements of movies that may get some reboots and some remakes. I have two films here that might get under your underskin a little bit. According to this one, Sony is looking to, according to Variety, Sony is looking to reboot and or redo the movie Princess Bride.
Really? Oh, fuck.
But that's not all. Universal Studios, Universal Studios, they are looking to reboot a film that I don't think can be redone. Its actors make the film what it is. We have discussed this film, Ryan, and I think you know where I'm going with this.
So, what are they talking about?
They want to relaunch, however you want to call it, Face Off.
No, you can't remake Face Off. What are you? Oh my God, no.
I feel like I've succeeded in this 2 minutes or less already.
Why can't people just leave classics alone? They're done. Let people... Oh, God damn it.
So
next thing we're gonna get a remake of fucking Gone with the Wind or Casablanca or some stupid shit. Come on, guys.
See, those I can kind of understand because of color and everything. I can kind of get on a technical level remaking those. But here's the thing about Face Off I want to bring up. It was a lightning in the bottle, flash in the pan, once-in-a-lifetime thing. It had all the parts and elements of a film that shouldn't work coming together to make a film that worked spectacularly. You cannot remake that and expect that same level of success. I guarantee you cannot.
Yeah, no, they absolutely they have. There is a 99.997% chance of that reboot being just garbage, just trashed here.
Mm-hmm. Like,
because it's so ridiculous. It's so fucking ridiculous. The two main actors of the movie propel it past ridiculousness to like sheer absurdity, but make it work. Like you can't redo that. You can't.
I don't think there's any way you could redo it without the two main leads from that film being who they are. And I don't think there's any actors out there who I can recall, or who I can think of, who could best fit their insane over-the-top acting and still be good at it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see it. I can't see it happen.
I hate it. I hate it. Thanks, I hate it.
Like, there was a day when I thought Jurassic Park could be remade, and you know what? Like I said before, it shouldn't be, but if you remade it to be more like the book, I could understand where you're coming from. Face Off is just so unique and different. Like, Universal Studios, if you're listening, don't do this. It's a sin. You are committing a crime against nature. You are evil, and you belong next to EA in the pit of studios and companies that should burn in hell.
God damn it.
With that in mind, Ryan, what you been watching?
Well, right now I'm about to fucking watch Face Off while we do this podcast so I can bask in it. Oh, Jesus. No, okay. So, for my what you're watching, I actually decided to get a little highbrow this past week. I have been wanting to watch a pair of films that I've constantly been hearing have been amazing, but I just never took the time to actually sit down and watch them. They both deal with music at a professional level, and they both show the protagonist as an obsessive artist that's willing to do anything and to strive for perfection. So the first movie I watched was Whiplash.
Okay.
That's with J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller. He Miles Teller is the guy who played Reed Richards in the horrible Fantastic Four reboot, but he's actually a really a damn good actor, and he plays off J.K. Simmons, which is just insane. And I highly recommend checking that out. But the one that really like kind of blew me away was Black Swan.
Okay, tell me about that one. I've been wanting to see that for a while. It's on my back list. I keep forgetting to check it out. How is it?
Yeah. So Black Swan blew me. Black Swan was killer. This is a Darren Aronofsky film. Mm-hmm. This is the guy who did Requiem for a Dream. This is the guy who did The Fountain. This is the guy who did the remake of Noah with Russell Crowe. And he's known for really powerful, really evocative filmmaking that really kind of drives you to uncomfortable places, but he tells like fantastic stories in the midst of it. And I watched it not knowing it was a Darren Aronofsky film. I watched it because I had heard it was a fantastic movie, and Natalie Portman won an Oscar for it. And I know I've given Natalie Portman a lot of shit on this podcast in particular, so I have to at least check this out. I eat my words, or at least I don't eat them. I don't eat them. She's not a terrible actress. In fact, she's a phenomenal actress.
She just needs good material.
Yes, she needs amazing material. And I think it's possibly that she's more suited towards the dramatic stuff, because all the dramatic stuff that I've seen her in has been fantastic, but like the more lighthearted kind of more mainstream media stuff hasn't really been a great fit. So it's quite possible that it's just that it's the material that she's given.
Well, it sucks that her most notable roles include Thor's girlfriend and Anakin's girlfriend. Like, I'm sorry, but you are not getting the best resume off that. I'm sorry. I mean, yes, It's high profile. It gets your name out there, but you aren't getting the stuff that really is going to let you chew the scenery the way you want to.
Right. So Black Swan is a Black Swan is a rough movie. It's amazing.
I think it's like borderline horror, right?
No, it's not actually. Well,
like from what I saw in the trailers, from what I've been told, it conjures up horror elements, but it never really dives into the horror genre like deeply.
I'd want to say it's more of a thriller, but it's barely a thriller. It tells the story of a young ballerina who gets essentially the premier role in an amazing show, Swan Lake, where she has to play both the white swan and the black swan. General quick story on Swan Lake. Essentially, the story is the white swan, who is princess of swans, is actually a princess, a real princess trapped in a swan's body, and she needs true love to break the spell. And she's getting closer to this human prince, and thinking that he might actually break the spell. But the black swan, her twin, actually seduces the guy, and kind of steals her chance to be to break the spell. And driven mad by despair, the white swan kills herself. And through the movie, that's what they do with this one character. She, her desire to be perfect, to attain perfection, but also to embody this role that she's kind of unable to do. It drives her mentally to the point of insanity, where she starts to embody the black swan more fully. And it's good. Go see it. It's very, very good. It's very rough, but it's very good.
Like I said, it's been on my list for a while, and I always feel bad I never get around to seeing it, but it's one of those things I need to be in the mood to see it, and it's just one of those things I haven't really pulled out yet, but yeah, it's something I'll check out. It's definitely, I'm glad someone I know has finally told me to go see it, because I've been wanting to see it, so. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep mine brief. I've got a lot of stuff I've been having built up for my watch-a-watchins, so I'll be quick. So it's going to date us a little bit, but this is still September for us. It's December for you guys, getting close to Christmas for you. But I saw It Chapter 2 on budget night last week. Good stuff. I will say that I agree with a lot of the critics in the sense that it's not really scary, but I do think that this is actually good in the sense that what works is it's got some comedy to it, or I guess a bit more levity to it. Like, yes, it still has dark situations and still has, the spooky vibe to it, but overall, it's definitely not playing the same horror card it did the first time around with Chapter 1. The acting's phenomenal, even if you don't like what the change in direction in terms of, the tone. The acting is still, top-notch. They've got some great actors for it. Obviously, what's his name? James McAvoy. One of my favorites. Bill Hader surprised me with how good he was. I haven't seen him in anything before. I don't recall. But seeing him here, definitely a Bill Hader fan now. Overall, good. Very good. And, of course, Bill Skarsgård, he's killing it. Still killing it. Looking forward to see what he does next. And then I'll add one more thing for my list. Since you did two, I'll do two. So, Ryan, recently Nintendo has dropped the Super Nintendo games on their console library.
Ooh, okay.
Which is really cool, because as much as I like the old retro games, I think the oldest I'll go to is probably Super Nintendo, because that's when the visuals were really solid and the gameplay had evolved from what for the original Nintendo did. So you have some of the best games on Super Nintendo, in my opinion. And I finally, after years of having it in my backlog and picking up, starting it, and putting it down, and never coming back to it, I finally started and finished Super Metroid.
Okay. What's your take on it?
So the biggest comparison I can make is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which I also played earlier this year, for those who recall. And I'm not gonna lie, I liked Castlevania a little bit more in most areas, but Super Metroid has a few things it does really well that Castlevania doesn't. Samus can overall move faster, but I do think that mobility-wise, I do like how Alucard moves in Castlevania. I also like his melee options better versus having just range with her. And having everything tied to the shoot button, like her grapple beam as well, is incredibly frustrating. Because I want to be able to grapple and shoot, but I don't think they introduced that to later games, which I get it. It still sucks, but I get it. Mm-hmm. So I think there are limitations on Super Metroid that I don't care for, that I feel are ignored or outright gone in Castlevania. But I do like the story of Super Metroid a bit better. But I like the horror monsters and everything in Castlevania. So they're both really good. I love the whole genre in general, and these games have just kind of reignited my passion for it. So I'm looking forward to trying out games like Hollow Knight and maybe later games in both these series that I have not gotten to yet. And of course, more like 3D Metroidvanias like Dark Souls and stuff like that would also be pretty cool to get back into as well. So, had a good time. Looking forward to picking up Link to the Past, or I think there's another one on there I was looking forward to, like Demon's Fire or something like that. There's a couple on there that I have not touched in a good long while I'd love to pick back up. So,
awesome. Well, please keep us posted as you keep going, all right?
Indeed. Let's get, with that in mind, let's move on to this week's episode. Welcome back, everybody, to the Star Wars celebration leading to the Rise of Skywalker.
Do you have to keep using the name?
Again, I'm optimistic. We'll see how this plays out.
Episode 9. It's episode 9.
We've entered into the somewhat controversial Disney era with 2015's The Force Awakens. Written and directed by J.J. Abrams, with writing credit to Lawrence Kasdan, who you might remember from Return of the Jedi, and Michael Arndt. Arndt? Can't pronounce that. This movie earned a total of $2 billion, with a B, billion dollars, and 68,223,000 worldwide. That's only about 8.5 times what it cost, which seems like, for as much money as you got, that's not as good a turnaround, guys. What's going on there?
That's more than $200 million, guys. God.
We'll talk about that.
Guys! I'm sorry, keep going.
The cast includes our veteran smashers, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels, Peter Mayhew, and Tim Rose are here, along with some of our new fighters, including Oscar Isaacs, John Boyega, Andy Serkis, Doomhall, or is it Domhnall or Doomhall? Domhnall Gleeson, Adam Driver, Gwendolyn Christie, and our newest hope, Daisy Ridley.
Our newest hope. Oh, she's so cool.
I really like her, but we'll talk about it more. This movie did win some awards, several in fact, including a BAFTA for Achievement in Special Visual Effects, several Saturn Awards from the Academy of Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror for Best Special Effects, Best Makeup, Best Editing, Best Music, Best Supporting Actor, Best Writing, and Best Sci-Fi Film. That was a good year for them at the Saturn Awards. An AFI Award for Movie of the Year. John Williams took home another BMI Film and TV Award and a Music Grammy. So there we go. And the MTV and TV Awards for Best Villain and Breakthrough Performance to Daisy Ridley, among many more nominations and awards. A lot of love for this film.
Makes me wonder why so many people were bitching about it. But that's not right there. I'm sorry. We have fun facts. It's
Ryan,
not time for gripes.
I suspect some of the bitching might be because of some popular media, like South Park, making jokes about it being nothing but nostalgia. But we'll get into it.
It's time for fun facts. That's what it's time for. God damn it. I have 3 for you here today. The first of which, the only time Harrison Ford has received top billing in a Star Wars film was this film. It makes him the first non-Jedi character to be credited first.
Woo!
I really like that they gave him that accolade, especially considering the stuff we'll talk about later on.
Well, and I guarantee you Carrie Fisher's going to get top billing for the final film.
100%. 100%. Next up, Mark Hamill claimed that George Lucas nonchalantly told him over lunch that a new Star Wars trilogy was going to be made by Disney, and if he didn't want to be involved, Luke Skywalker would simply be written out of the script. However, Hamill immediately agreed to reprise the role. Hamill admitted, however, that he pretended to be nonchalant about it, so he didn't seem like he was excited for the role. He also said within 5 seconds, Carrie exclaimed she would do it and asked if there was a part for her daughter. Wait, was he? Were they able to get Carrie's daughter?
Yeah.
Yes?
Billy Lord was in the next movie, actually.
Right. All right.
And I think what's funny is the time that she joined in this franchise was the same time she starred in a season of American Horror Story, and that's where I saw her first. She's good. She's real good.
All right. Well, last fun fact for today, we have the fact that Mark Hamill and John Boyega successfully lobbied director J.J. Abrams to allow Star Wars fan Daniel Fleetwood to see the film before the official release, as Fleetwood had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and was not expected to live to see the film's release date of December 15, 2015. Fleetwood was shown the film in a screening in his house after Disney agreed. Fleetwood died November 10th, 2015, but he got to see it. He got to see it before he went.
There's a lot of cool people out there who will do that for fans, and I'm really glad that these guys are on the ball for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read something similar to that for Smash Bros. When that was coming out, and what's his name, Sakurai was asked to do that for somebody. I think I remember reading that. It might have been a different game, but I'm pretty sure that was it. So don't hear it too often, but it's nice when it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get some initial thoughts out of the way. Despite what the critics of this movie have been saying about it feeding off nostalgia for The New Hope, I really like it. In a lot of ways, I think it's an improvement on what A New Hope was trying to do, and I definitely appreciate what this film overall turned out to be.
All right. So my initial thoughts, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed it more the second time. I just enjoyed it more this time, like after having a couple of years before I went to see it. I think the film is doing more subtle things than people realized, but I think viewers and critics alike kind of got caught seeing like couldn't see the forest despite the trees, kind of, and I'll get into that a little more after the synopsis. But overall, I really like it. I think it was very intentional in striking that nostalgia, but it was also setting up the seas for something different, and that takes skill to do.
Well, and I have a theory as to why the fans were divided once the Disney era started. I mean, we could go with the obvious reason that it's Disney, they took over, and things are different. That's obviously a big change that everyone's...
No, things are different. No, things are the same.
But, outside of Disney taking over, there's a lot of other news items that came up around this that weren't positively received, such as EA getting exclusive rights to the Star Wars video game license, the decanonizing of the EU, and, a lot of little bits here and there that just made fans feel on edge, like Disney didn't understand the fan base at all. And you could argue they didn't. You could very much argue they didn't. So you could definitely see that this is not the best foot to start on when going into this new trilogy. Not this film in particular, but just all this other stuff prior to the film coming out. So I don't blame the fans entirely for being a bit divisive when this new era started because of how unwelcoming it seemed like it was at first. I don't think these films are bad, and I don't think they should be held negatively in regards to all that. I think these are some of the best things to come out of this new era versus, the shit games and the decanonizing of books and everything changing in directions. And I get that a lot of people also want to see the adventures of the original heroes. It's like Legend of Korra after Last Airbender. You wanted to see Sokka, you wanted to see Aang and Katara do their adventures, but they grew up, they got old, some of them died, and so you move on to the next generation. That's kind of what this film's trying to do here. So I understand, and I understand where the hate and anger is coming from, but I appreciate what they're trying to do here, by and large.
You're a little more generous than I am. Let's hear this synopsis so we can dig into it.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to hearing your response to that more. Set many years after the events of Return of the Jedi, we meet Apocalypse, as he gains new intelligence for the Resistance that needs to get to General Leia. This intel is the whereabouts of Luke, who has abandoned the rest of the galaxy because he's tired of all this bullshit. Why are we resisting this time? Why, the First Order, a remnant of the Empire, which has some political stranglehold over the galaxy, but it's not clearly defined as to how or why in these films. Discount Darth Vader arrives to capture Poe, but Poe's droid, aka your kid's favorite Christmas toy from 2015, takes the intel and goes off to seek help. Also, one of the stormtroopers from the First Order attack has a mental breakdown and decides to rebel against the First Order, attempting to help Poe escape. This stormtrooper is renamed Finn by his new friend, and then two celebrate by stealing the ship and crashing into quicksand. Somehow, unharmed, Finn escapes the ship. Unable to find Poe, he ventures into the nearest city on Jakku for assistance. Both the droid and Finn meet Rey, a young woman with hopes and dreams of reuniting with her family and adventuring into space. Her dreams are then answered, with the First Order chasing them into a janky-ass-looking ship called the Nostalgia Falcon. Careful what you wish for there, Rey. Aerial combat happens, and our plucky young heroes escape, only to be seemingly abducted by another ship. But surprise, it's Lone Star and Barf, who have just arrived while on another mission for some other criminals. An incident with tentacles occurs, and our heroes escape aboard the Nostalgia Falcon. Their goal, to contact General Leia and get this intel about Luke to her. They arrive at the non-cantina to talk about to a small CGI woman about addressing their needs. But Finn elects to run away from all this mess. Rey wants to return to Jakku, but the plot demands she takes his lightsaber from the CGI woman that is just laying around. Before anyone gets what they want, the First Order arrives, and Discount Vader arrives and to get what he wants, a girlfriend. I'm only half kidding. They abduct Rey, and after some fighting, and Finn is now motivated to join the fight again. The power of boners is indeed stronger. Leia arrives, and exposition happens, telling us that the new Death Star, which is like 50 times bigger, is arriving. You think that they're compensating for something, huh? Finn says that he can turn off the shields, and Han volunteers to get him to the Death Planet. Rey has a moment with Discount Vader, causing him to remove his mask and killing any tension we had with the character. Rey manages to escape and joins with Finn and Han as they're about to blow up Planet Terror. But Discount Vader arrives, and Han goes to him, hoping to save his son, Ben Solo, from the clutches of the dark side. Instead, Harrison Ford finally gets his wish of Han dying for realsies this time. The Death Sphere is blown up. Our heroes try to escape, but Discount Vader cuts them off. Rey fights him with some surprisingly adept skill that causes the fanboys all around the world to have a series of collective shit-losing. They return to Leia to deliver the bad news, and Discount Vader returns to Gollum for training in the ways of the dark side. So, Ryan, what do you think of that movie?
I'm still really mad at you for Apocalypse. I'm still really mad about that.
You have to admit, that is probably one of the best puns out
there.
It
was a sleeper. I was just like, what the fuck is he? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, Oscar, why'd you take that role? Okay, I'm sorry.
And the best part is the fans will know it, too, because they should listen to that podcast for sure, right, you guys? Huh? Didn't you? Huh? Check it out down below. The Apocalypse Podcast. It had some of your best voice acting, and I loved it. It was great.
It did. I was having fun playing Apocalypse. That was great.
Okay, so Ryan, what did you think of that film?
Okay. I'm sorry.
There's a lot to unpack here, by the way. There's a lot to unpack.
I have to put my shit back together after this. All right. So, my main takeaway from the movie, and this is, it really surprised me when I sat down and really thought about it. This movie is very aware of itself on a meta level.
Yes.
I feel like the movie in and of itself is a story about stories. You have three major characters here, Rey, Finn, and Kylo Ren, who are essentially operating completely off of stories that they've heard in the past. You have Finn, who is shaken by the horror of the First Order, and really wants to break out, and this familiar narrative starts to build around him. He helps a rebel pilot escape who happens to be the best pilot in the galaxy, and they escape, but he unfortunately dies but he gives him his mission. He has to find his droid and get him to the rebels. He's heard this one before. So he finds the droid. The droid is accompanied by a beautiful local woman. and who's kind of enamored with the fact that he's a part of the resistance. So well, obviously, of course, I'm a part of the resistance, and he plays into that story until he realizes that the stories aren't always all they're cracked up to be, and sometimes they're really, really scary. And he's just a normal guy, and he would really like to not fight this hellish army until they take the person that he's really come to care for, and he actually has to overcome his fear to do the thing. Now, Rey, on the other hand, is operating off of a very old story that she's been told since she's been a child, that her parents left and her parents are coming back. So even though the galaxy is calling her to new heights and new adventures, she's clinging to that old story that she had when she was a kid. I have to go back home because my parents will come back and everything will be the way it was back then. Even though
I must go home now. My planet needs me.
Yes. And of course, you have Kylo, who grew up alongside legends and saw that they were not perfect people, and was sold a different story by Gollum. Supreme Leader Snoke. About
He's basically Gollum. Let's be real.
I know. Who tells him about the ways of the dark side and how his grandfather was one of the greatest Sith Lords ever to have shown up, and that he wants to follow in his father's footsteps. So all three of these guys are following in the footsteps of stories that they've held on to, and throughout the course of the movie, they find out that the story doesn't always happen in the exact same way. And in order to get the best story, you have to step away from what's been told to you to see something new. The movie is telling you what it's going to do with the new trilogy in this movie. It starts you off with a very familiar story, but it tells you it's going to be different this time. There's going to be different stuff that happens. It just starts you on familiar footing to get you on the same page.
Yeah, so to add to that, I feel like if you could define each era of Star Wars, you have your original trilogy, the era of hope, the era that is the most creatively, vibrant. It's the one that starts everything off. You have your prequel trilogy, which I would argue, there's a lot of ways you could define it. The era of setup, the era of darkness, the era of CGI, whatever you want to call it, but it lacks any real strong definition other that isn't negative. But I feel like this era here we have, the Disney era, these films that we've seen so far, and I'm imagining the third one's going to play into it a bit too, feels very deconstructionist, taking apart what the first films were about, taking the mythos, the legends, the plots, the characters, and deconstructing them and rebuilding them and recontextualize them in ways like Logan did for the X-Men brand. Yeah. It's taking apart what everything was and recontextualize it in a way that makes you realize that not everything was sunshine and rainbows, not everything was perfect. Just because the Empire fell does not mean that the war's over, etc., etc. Things that don't get addressed in the grand epics because those don't make for good stories. This is the fallout of what happens when you just listen to the good stories.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree on that.
It's like, if you don't dig too deep, the general face of it is, oh, they just did episode 4 again with shinier things and a girl protagonist instead of a guy, to appease the SJWs. And that's
Hearing you say that sounds hilarious.
That's such a fucking reductionist view of it. They're actually doing some really subtle storytelling within storytelling, and the fact that I don't know, there's been so much hate towards the new series that I constantly have to ask myself, is it just me? Am I just determined to think that this is a good movie and I'm ignoring what everybody else is seeing? But I honestly think that people aren't giving it enough credit, because they're really trying to do something subtle with this. Like you said, it does deconstruct a lot of the original messages from episodes 4, 5, and 6. They take those apart and they recontextualize them and they bring them to new audiences while telling new stories within it. It's like, this era was amazing. You guys remember this era? We're going to start from there, but we're not going to stay there. Like, you've heard the stories, but when you're actually in the story, it's different. And we're going to show you how the new generation operates when they're placed in a similar predicament. It's not going to be the same thing. They're going to have the same start because they're starting from the same spot, but they're going to be doing different stuff. And if you stay along with the ride, you're like, they're going to tell some really great stories. But I feel like people just didn't get it or didn't want to get it. I don't know.
Well, and I think I understand that a bit, because, so we'll backpedal a bit here. But like I said at the top of the, before the synopsis, there's a lot of reasons why I can understand fans wouldn't like it, with all the bad news circling the film that had nothing to do with the film, but related to Star Wars in general. Just change in general. But you gotta admit, with the decanons of the EU, and the fact that we're jumping years ahead, and not seeing the continued adventures of Luke, Leia, and Han, whatever you want to call him.
His name is Han. Dag.
I know. I'm making fun of you, Lando Calrissian. You fucking can't pronounce his bullshit name. Anyway, no. There's an argument that we missed our chances to see these heroes in action. And, yeah, I could agree that it would have been nice to see Luke train the next era. It would have been nice to see Han and Leia deal with their son as he's growing up. It would have been nice to see the new Jedi Order building up. It would have been nice to see new threats on the horizon. There's a lot of cool things that we missed out on that the EU touched on and really... It got our hopes up for something bigger. And I think that's just, like I said earlier, it's the same thing that happened with Legend of Korra after Last Airbender. We had this big time gap in between. These heroes that we had before, we didn't get to see them do anything unless you go to see the extended universe stuff like the comics and whatnot. And not seeing it, not get to seeing it unfold on the big screen or the small screen, whatever or what have you, it does feel a little bit deflating. I'm not going to argue that point, but I don't think it has any negative connotation to what we do have, though. Because at the end of the day, the characters do have to move on and pass away. They have to let the next generation take over. Just like how in the Marvel Universe, actors are retiring. They are leaving the MCU at some point. You just have to accept it. Meaning we'll get a new Iron Man down the road. We'll get a new Hulk down the road. We'll get a new characters of everyone down the road. They'll be the next generation, or they'll be from different universes just with different faces to sell the idea, whatever it is. But change is going to happen. It's gonna happen with all that stuff. And Star Wars is kind of the first one to really push into that whole next generation of heroes kind of thing with these big brand names. And I'm actually kind of curious to see if they stick the landing this time around with this 9th movie coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I personally applaud them for kind of starting fresh and like really starting up with the new generation, a new generation of stories. Even the decanonization of the EU, like after a while, I can accept it, especially because they pay homage and really set up like the next major conflict that comes from the EU. The fact that of Han and Leia's children, one becomes an amazing Jedi and the other becomes a Sith, and essentially she has to kill her twin. They pretty much ported that story over from the EU. So they pay homage to the stuff that came before them, but they recontextualize it for a new audience. And the only other option that they would have had, if they really wanted to continue with the stories of Luke, Han, and Leia, is they would have had to recast those people.
I know.
It's just like, what would make you feel worse? Having a movie that goes 40 years from the original, and then using the original characters as they pass on the torch to these new faces and these new heroes that are going to take these new stories up to the stars? Or do you want to just say, all right, well, Mark Hamill's no longer Luke Skywalker, so what are you going to do? Like, what?
Well, I think part of that, though, is that we had let's see, it was like 1980 something when the last movie came out, 84 for Last Jedi. We had decades of time where they could have done a new trilogy or a new movie with the old characters. Now, granted, we had the prequels, etc., etc., but I get it. There's a lot of time we had in between. It could have happened. The opportunity was missed, but yeah, no, you're right. We're in an era now where you just can't do that anymore. You can't relive the era of Luke, Han, and Leia as they were getting older, growing wiser, and all that stuff. We've passed that. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it ages ago. And yeah, missed opportunity. I'll give them that. But that doesn't mean that we can't see those adventures. For all we know, there could be an animated series down the road. There could be a comic line down the road. In fact, I think there are comics of Darth Vader still going on right now. So, definitely. Yeah, that is a thing that can happen. So yeah, I don't think that we're going to miss out on those adventures entirely. Yes, we're going to miss out on them with Luke, Han, and Leia being played by the actors we grew up with. But you'll still see some semblance of them in the games, the comics, the cartoons, what have you. Something will come up because they know that is the era that's going to sell the most money. And maybe going forward, they can push the future of Star Wars and the universe on new audiences. But to keep the old audience around, they're going to have to keep those nostalgia dollars going in some way, shape, or form. And those are going to be the ways they'll probably do it.
And they gave it to them with fucking, with fucking Episode 7. Episode 7 was supposed to be the nostalgia movie.
I know.
They literally, they saw the problem. They gave you as good of a balm to put on the wound as possible, and they're like, okay guys, we can't go back to 4, but we're gonna start off pretty much from the same spot as 4. We're gonna get us back into it, wash the taste of the prequels out of your mouth. This is where we're gonna start from. We're resetting the dial back to this.
No midichlorians, none of this other bullshit.
Yeah, this is the bar. It's adventure, it's excitement, it's fun, it's the Force, it's everything. We're going to start from right here, and we're going to go. We're going to go somewhere different, but we are going to go. We're going to start from here. I think that J.J. Abrams and the people that are writing this, they're really, really good with... It's almost like they break the fourth wall with how much they're trying to communicate with diehard Star Wars fans, diehard fans of these series. It's almost like they're speaking through the screenplay directly to the fans by giving them that nostalgia that they really wanted. But even when it comes to Han's death, it was so fucking foreshadowed for 4 minutes before the deed actually is done. If you're paying attention, you're like, okay, guys, it's coming. Just start bracing yourself. It's coming. We're essentially painting, we're using the world and the dying of the sun to really show you guys this is about to happen. And I love. It's almost like they're hand holding the fan base through this movie, in truth. And I applaud them for trying it. I'm just really sad that the fans didn't take that or didn't see that for what it was. You are much more forgiving of the fan base than I am at this point. Because I'm just kind of mad because I feel like they made a lot of concessions to the fan base. And I feel like at the end of the day, they may be over-conceding to the fan base at the expense of the story.
Ryan, I come from the fan base where they were making death threats because they changed Sonic's eye color to green. I mean, I have seen the dark side of fandoms. You don't come back from the Sonic fan base and not change. That's a fact.
Good God.
Yeah. Some of you people out there are monsters. I just want you to know that. No. So, Star Wars is a very loud, very vibrant fan base, and I'm not gonna say that I don't condemn them a little bit for some of this stuff, but I don't think that they're 100% unjustified. I think there's definitely circumstances surrounding the release of this film and the new trilogy that definitely does not help their situation. I could just talk forever about the fucking fact that EA has an exclusive license for Star Wars games for 10 years, and of the 10 years we've had so far, let's see, we're at now, year or year 5, year 6, something like that, they've released 2 games. Under Lucasfilms and under other studios, way back before EA had this exclusive license, there was a period of 10 years that released like over a dozen Star Wars games. This whole thing's fucked up, and it shouldn't happen. And I'm more mad about that than any fucking movie could ever make me. But that's because it's EA, and EA's fucking garbage, so there you go. Hey, we're getting Jedi Knight Outcast 2 on Switch here soon, so you get a good Star Wars game in between all your shitty Star Wars games. You get the best one, actually. It's really good. So, have at it, guys. With that, I got some questions to get us to a more direct line of discussion here.
I'm sorry. I had like a thesis, and then we just kind of circled around it. I'm sorry.
You kind of answered a couple of my questions already, and I kind of helped bring some of them in to kind of get us somewhere. So, let's get to the nitty-gritty of the plot here. How about that?
All right.
So, what exactly is the First Order? How are they a threat? And why doesn't the film better explain how they came into power after the fall of the Emperor?
Well, to answer the last question, I think they learned the lesson of trying to over-justify the rise of the bad guys with Episode 1, because nobody really wants to hear about a bunch of trade sanctions and blockades and shit to, like...
No, but, like, here's the thing, though. At the end of Return of the Jedi, we're under the impression that, the Empire's fallen, Republic is back in order, or is at least building to be back in order. Things should go smoothly from here. You know, that's the impression we're given.
That's fair.
Now, obviously, that's not what happened, but we don't know what happened. There's really no clear explanation outside of, like, going to books or comics, whatever have you. But for the casual film goer, these bad guys just come out of nowhere, and they're basically just Empire 2.0. What gives? Where are they at? Where'd they come from? Who the hell put these guys in charge?
Right. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Luke defeated the 2 heads of the Empire, like the 2 spooky magic user guys, and routed the Death Star and like scattered like armies to the wind. But though, like, there was still a good amount of the Empire like left. There were still a lot of generals, and the Imperial remnant like bands itself back together. It's never like as strong as the Empire was at the height of its power, because they literally took over the Republic. But there are still a large amount of hostile armies that are around and about, and it only really needed powerful people to kind of take up those reins, to kind of use it as they saw fit. So, like, while they don't go into how it's set up, I don't think they really need to, because it's you already know it's the Empire, or at least the remnants of the Empire, that are under the mantle of a new person with spooky powers, and a new class of generals that actually believed that the Empire was doing the right thing. And you just have a group of armed people that now have leadership, and all of a sudden they're very dangerous again. Message! Sorry. Hint, hint.
That's not subtle at all, anybody. No, I hear you. I think, wasn't one of the... I might be misremembering, but wasn't one of the original titles, or subtitles, I guess I should say, like Remnants of the Empire or Shadow of the Empire? I know there was an N64 game called Shadow of the Empire, but...
Yeah.
I didn't know if that, like, if there was any kind of inkling for that here, too, but...
I mean, in the EU, again, they pay homage to this, but in the EU, like, the Imperial Remnant is still an actual, like, galactic political power. They just no longer have complete dominance over the Republic. They are one voice in the Republic, and they're subject to sanctions and whatnot. They're treated very much like Germany after World War II. And but instead of them like recovering from the error of their ways, they just kind of nurse this like deep grudge and resentment.
They double down on those errors.
Yeah, they double down on it. They just don't make as much noise because they know the combined Republic beat the shit out of them last time. So they're just kind of biding their time.
So you're saying a Death Moon and racism didn't win last time? We're gonna be more racist and make a bigger Death Planet. We can't lose.
We can't lose because we now have 2 spooky magic user guys, man.
They're back.
They're back. Hell, I heard the guy that wears the helmet was Han Solo's son. Bro, we can't lose. We can't lose. We got this.
Have you seen his lightsaber? It's got 2 more little lightsabers on the side.
Hey, I actually like the crossheads.
I don't hate it at all. I think it's kind of cool looking, but yeah,
like,
no,
I thought it was a cool. I wasn't convinced at first, but I thought it was a cool innovation for like an innovative design for a lightsaber, because we've all seen like the standard lightsabers and we've done like a couple of different things, but something immediately eye-catching is like, this is different. The lightsaber cross hilt was actually pretty cool. And it matched his fighting style. I like that. He used it kind of like a claymore, so it was cool.
It's definitely better than the switchblade double lightsaber we saw in the trailer for.
Man, don't get me started on the switchblade double lightsaber, please.
Listen, guys, I'm all for more double lightsabers. I think they were cool when they were first introduced, but the practicality of a switchblade looking piece of shit, like, y'all realize that doesn't really work like it's supposed. Never mind, we're moving on.
It's gonna be like a fork, and then she's gonna hit a switch, and it's gonna... No, okay. Sorry. Next question.
I want a light spoon. I want a spoon made of lightsaber. It'll be great.
I want a Swiss Army lightsaber. How about that? Can I have one of those?
It's a pitch saber.
Yeah.
Or light fork. There we go. Let's see. Moving on. Since we're talking about him already, let's jump ahead. We'll come back to Rey. What are your thoughts on Kylo Ren and Snoke? I want to jump in, if I may.
Please.
So, there is a lot of hate among fans, and I know plenty personally, who do not like Kylo Ren. And I understand, but disagree. I understand that he is not the menacing, towering, imposing figure that Darth Vader is. And I understand that when he takes his mask off, it kills all... I agree, it killed the tension of this mysterious, like, dark figure in this. Like,
this teenage edgelord.
If they wanted to retain any of the awe and mystery that Vader had, they need to keep the mask on. But that's not the story they're telling. So I'm not going to be upset. I agree it kills the tension, but that's not what they're going for. What you're getting is a character who is very untamed. He's unkempt. He's trained in the Force, but not completely. His training with Luke came to a sudden end. We'll talk about it next week. And I don't think Snoke is teaching him a lot. They even imply that a little bit, where that he's not ready for his training until he's killed Han Solo. And in the end of the film, they even say we will go on to the next phase of your training, or something to that effect. So Kylo Ren is, for the most part, trained, but not enough to really be as effective as he could be.
Right.
So you're getting a character who, his emotions are wild and crazy, and he's being spoon-fed lies and reasons to become angrier, more irrational, and so he's gonna lash out, and that's what makes him powerful in the ways of the dark side, because of that unfettered emotion, because it's just so raw and intense. But it makes him uncontrollable and unpredictable, which is why you see him do things like break a computer room apart or kill Snoke in the next film. Again, we'll talk about it next week. So I think they do a good job with it. And Adam Driver, I've seen him in other films, and I've seen him here. He's good. He's real good.
Yeah, he's good. He's a very
great.
good actor, guys.
Like, this is how I kind of wanted Hayden Christensen to be. This dark, emotional, imposing figure who who loses control like you expect, like, at the drop of a hat, but it can be reserved and calm when the situation calls for it. You know what I mean? And I think this is definitely a good direction to take a relation of Darth Vader, a grandson of Darth Vader, because this is what Anakin was more or less like. This is how I envision Anakin when the actor behind him is doing his A game. You know what I mean? So I think Kylo Ren works for me for the most part.
Okay. I respectfully disagree.
Interesting.
So I personally don't like Okay. I don't like Kylo Ren. I understand what they're going for. I absolutely understand what they're going for. And I know that they're making they're like the concept of this supposedly like superimposing guy really just being essentially a child really wanting to follow in his ancestors' footsteps but just kind of failing at it is intentional. I don't think he is that imposing, like especially after the mask is taken off, it always feels like he's trying to be imposing. Like the thing that makes him imposing is the fact that he wears all black and has spooky powers and a lightsaber. That's the stuff that he's going for. But you come to realize that the people around him are scared of him not because he's so powerful, but because he's prone to throw temper tantrums. And unfortunately, he has a big-ass sword that cuts through everything when he has a temper tantrum. So it's more like, please don't piss him off because he'll cut you in half because he's upset, as opposed to the real, like, in control, menacing guy who does not tolerate failure like Vader was. It's just like everything about Kylo Ren feels like he's trying too hard. And again, I don't fault the movie for this. I think that is intentional. But I also don't think that we're served as Kylo Ren being a better villain. A more interesting character, yes, but not a better villain.
I think that might be a problem with this trilogy overall, is that there isn't a Darth Vader, there isn't a Palpatine. I mean, you have elements of them, but there isn't a standout villain that kind of drives the plot forward. And I think they're trying, and I think that's why a lot of people are thinking they're quote-unquote returning to Palpatine in the next film. We'll see how that plays out when it comes out. We don't know yet. It's still a ways off for both of us. So yeah, no, I'm curious, because a series without a driving force, like, imagine a Batman film without a Joker or a Riddler or anyone like that. Just imagine, like, you have, like, I don't know, say Jason Todd's there, but he's not, like, full Jason Todd. Like, he's still fighting crime, but he's not, like, fucking going crazy. I don't know, it just feels like there's something missing when you aren't using an iconic element of Batman, which is a villain. And here, which is his rogues gallery. And here, we're missing a key component. Some Darth Sidious, Darth Vader, trying to think of some other Siths from the expanded universe and games I can't recall any at the moment. What's the one from Jedi Knight now? I'm trying to remember that one. I know Kyle Katarn's the main character. I can't remember who the bad guy was.
I mostly think of, like, Revan and Malak.
Revan, that's what I was thinking of.
And, Darth Nihilus. And,
I think it's Dasan, if I remember right. Darth Dasan or something like that. Some lizard dude. It was weird. I don't know. That game was weird, but it's fun. Anyway. No. So, yeah, I feel like the lack of a very, like, iconic, significant villain hurts this series a bit, but it's not like the other characters are lacking for anything.
Right. I can agree with that point. I think, like, in trying to give you a really interesting and in trying to give you a complex character that's also a criticism on certain parties in our society.
Oh, you mean the Donner Party? Yep, I know that one.
Yeah. In an attempt to create an interesting character that's also a critique on certain, like, people and certain types of people in our society, you lose, like, you've lost, like, a core component of what makes Star Wars. And I would argue that the way having him kill Han is actually, like, it's the story and it's Kylo trying to go all in on the dark side. He's like, I'm feeling this pull. I have to like leave no chance for me to go back. Like, I have to commit fully, and this is how I do it. And this is how we sell Kylo as, like, the big bad. That's supposed to be where Kylo becomes the Vader of this series.
Hey guys, Kylo killed Han Solo. Darth Vader couldn't do that. Isn't he great?
Yeah. But, I mean, he, like, that's supposed to be his moment. That's supposed to be, like, where he becomes a true Sith Lord. But it doesn't really work that way. And I think the story is very intentional. But yes, I do think that that's one of the points where it diverges from the original. That's one of the points where it diverges from the original story, because if this had happened in the original story, and we were seeing Anakin really become Vader, and Anakin had to actively kill somebody he loved, after that he would have been straight up Sith Lord. This is it's like after Anakin helps with the raid on the temple and murders a room full of children. Whenever you see him then, after that, he is Darth Vader. He is in control. He is menacing. He's quiet. And it's just like coiled, controlled violence and malice. That's it. That's supposed to be like his breaking point, where it's just like, all right, he's fully in. And Han dying is supposed to be that moment for Kylo, but it doesn't work out the way he thinks it will.
Well, maybe, and you hit the point there, I think. After Anakin goes Dark Lord, he does have this imposing, I'm in control kind of figure. Whereas Kylo, he still doesn't have control. You see him in the fight against Rey at the end, and he's still struggling to hold it together. He's still struggling to keep his emotions in check. He's, beating his side to kind of help, keep the wounds from slowing him down. And he's struggling to fight against someone who can barely hold a lightsaber, who Snoke says has barely held a lightsaber. So, there is definitely something about him that shows he has so much to learn. But to me, and I know we're disagreeing here, and I know we got to move on. That works.
We could talk the rest of the podcast about this.
We could. To me, it works on what they're trying to sell, but I don't think what they're selling is the most interesting thing they could be selling. I can at least agree to that.
Okay. We can be there. We can be there.
We got two other characters we got to hit up before we can move on. We're already at 1 hour and 3, so strap in, guys. This is gonna be a long one. Biggest criticism I've seen, or one of the big criticisms, Ryan, do you agree or disagree? Is Rey too much of a Mary Sue? Why or why not?
Okay. I will admit, when I originally saw this, the concept of her being able to do, like, high-level Jedi shit, like intermediate level Jedi shit, like a few hours after, like as she's like starting to test her powers, was like maybe a stretch, maybe. And it's mostly because you compare it to like with a movie this close to A New Hope, you automatically compare it to A New Hope. You compare her to Luke. It's just like, Luke wasn't fucking stepping up toe-to-toe with Vader in 4. He had to go through a whole second movie, and it was only till the second, like the end of Empire, where he was able to do some stuff with telekinesis. He was able to find his center and really use the Force like that, and stand toe-to-toe with Vader and get a couple licks in. And the fact that Rey could do that at the end of the first movie was just like, but...
Which I think might say more to Kylo than her, but...
Right, and that's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. There are a lot of mitigating factors in 4 that has it make more sense. The fact that Kylo is really not the strong Sith Lord that he's supposed to be. He's playing pretend. He's trying to be Vader, and he's failing pretty hard. He has training, but at the end of the day, he's like an edgelord teenager that thinks he is a master swordsman because he's had a couple of kung fu lessons. Okay, sure, whatever, kid.
Touch of death.
Right, like fucking 5-point palm exploding heart technique. No, but so you have her paired up against this guy who is pretending like he's super dangerous, and in some ways he is, but he's not as dangerous as Vader was. You also have her learning very fast in regards to Jedi technique. Like, the big thing that really caught my eye is the fact that she had just spent like 20-30 minutes wrestling for mental control with Kylo, and then after that used the Jedi mind trick on the guard. And originally I was like, how can you be able to do that? But then it hit me, Kylo was literally just trying to do it to her. So she's like, well, shit, maybe I can do that. And then she does it. She fucking does it.
So there's two things I want to point out here. Number one, so there's two theories that could come out of this. And the first theory I've got is that what you're saying is right. She's seeing the Force take place in front of her, and she is mimicking it. There's reason there's reason to say that could be a case, because my brother, for example, in real life, he and I used to take piano lessons together, and I was, competent, but I needed to practice. I needed to actually, go over and over again to get really good at something, a song or something. My brother, who I wish he would have stuck with it. He was really talented. He could watch someone play a song once, and then with some, tripping here and there, because, he's still learning everything. He could basically play what someone else played before him if he watched them and watched them do it. And it was kind of crazy
amazing. That's an amazing.
It's kind of crazy how good he could do that. So, there's a case that might be how Rey is operating here, which is interesting. But they need to play it up more if that's the case.
Also keep in mind, and I don't want to cut you off. I want you to keep going after that. But also keep in mind, she is also operating with the legends of Luke Skywalker fresh in her mind. Like, compare it to Luke, who had no idea what the fuck a Jedi was, and is just finding out.
We'll get to that.
There are a whole bunch of these mystical powers, and they're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And Rey, who's literally grown up on the stories of Luke Skywalker and the Jedi, and they could do all of these things. Like, as she has kind of like a basis to test her power on. She's like, okay, if I actually do have this power, this guy just tried to use this power on me. Maybe I can try that. Oh shit, that works. Well, she also has all of these stories about the Jedi of old that she can also try to mimic. So she had more of a leg up on learning the Force techniques than Luke did, which I don't think people also take into account.
So my other theory, and I've been holding this one for a while.
All right, let me hear it.
Yeah, so I have less reason to believe it's true after The Last Jedi, but I think there's still evidence that supports that it could still be a thing. So, I think Rey has always been sensitive to the Force, because I think that her parents are, in fact, Force users as well. My theory, and this is a stretch, she was abandoned on that planet Jakku by her parents, who may or may not have been students of Luke at the time, and they left her there because they were worried of what might happen with Kylo Ren. He left and all that stuff. And when he came back and saw everybody else, that is when they died. Or they may have left her there before they went to training. Either way, my theory is that that's ultimately what happened. Is that they had some Force powers, but they weren't like Luke Skywalker level or anything. They were the average Jedi user. They picked up the seals and whatnot, but they were cut down by Kylo or some other incident before they could ever return. And that's why she's sensitive. That's why they haven't returned. That's why Kylo might have some inside knowledge as to who they might have been. Oh, they weren't anyone. They weren't anyone important. Because I guess arguably they weren't. They're dead. But I do think that there's some connection there. I think there's some evidence for it. It's definitely not as strong as it was before Last Jedi came out. I'm curious to see if that ends up playing out or not. But I would be interested to see if she's inherited some Force skill from that end.
That's
and then, of course,
possible.
And then, of course, there's a third theory, which, I'm going to credit to the guys at Funhouse, because I think one of them brought it up. I don't remember who brought this one up, but there's another theory with the release of the new trailer. This is not mine. There's a theory that she maybe another attempt at creating life through the Force, a la like Anakin Skywalker, and that is why she is adept at the Force. But the means of creating her are different situations than how they made Anakin, and who knows how that's going to play out, but that's another theory I've heard, which does interest me, but I'm not super sold on it.
Okay.
Star Wars, the place where theories are born and probably will die.
I mean, those are definitely plausible, and we could absolutely see stuff like that being brought up in Episode 9. Of course, Episode 8 talks about why that shit doesn't matter, but I will save that gripe for Episode 8.
We'll get to that.
But yeah, no, I don't think she's too much of a Mary Sue. I think here's my final thought on that. So what if she is? So what? Literally, so what? Like, we had an 18-year-old farm kid whose biggest accomplishments was riding a speeder down a dune, down miles of sand dunes, and being able to shoot like womp rats with a fucking small blaster. Yet we put him in the cockpit of an aerial fighter, of a fucking jet fighter, for all intents and purposes, and he's flying with the best of them and making impossible shots, guys. If Rey is a Mary Sue, Luke was absolutely a Mary Sue. So who the fuck cares? They're the protagonists in the story. They have the tools, and they're discovering things within them that are allowing them to overcome impossible odds. That's exactly what you signed up for with Episode 4. It's what you got with Episode 7. The big problem is that Rey is a girl and not a guy. And that's why people are like, oh, this is bullshit. It's absolutely not believable that a woman could show up and be as good as a trained guy with no, when she's had the Force all of fucking 2 hours. Are you kidding? Shush, sit down.
The worst part about that is you're not exaggerating, you're not wrong, you're hitting some pretty strong points, and it's kind of sad that is the reason, or at least one of the main reasons.
It's really shitty. That's really shitty, guys. That's all the argument boils down. That's all the argument boils down to. Because if Rey is a Mary Sue, then Luke was absolutely a Mary Sue. So.
Oh, and I'm gonna warn you now, Ryan. You're gonna see criticisms of that Harley Quinn movie coming up when that comes out because it's an all girls superhero movie. This is lame.
Nobody wants to see that. Of course not.
No one wants to see all this pink. Fuck this pink. I'd rather be in the stink. If you know what I mean.
Oh, ugh, God, damn it.
Okay, moving on before we get down that rabbit hole. Okay. So aside from diversity, Ryan, what does Finn bring to the narrative, and what do you want to see from him as the trilogy evolves?
This is a really good question. I'm glad you brought it up. I think Finn represents the everyman in this trilogy, which is actually really interesting because in the original trilogy, you didn't have somebody that just was a normal guy. You had the young, plucky farm boy who was thrust into adventure and is going to become the destined hero. You had right? Yeah, I'm sorry. You had that guy. You had the charismatic smuggler who knew his ways around the back alleys of the universe and could pretty much get his hands on anything that he needed and was really resourceful and really cool, suave, debonair. And then you had the respectable and honorable princess who has an inner strength and is going to rally people around her so that justice can be done in everybody's name. You had all those guys, but you didn't have a person that could stand in for just what happens if a normal person is thrown into this bullshit. And that's what Finn is to me. He's been indoctrinated into the stormtroopers, and in his first mission is overcome by the horror of everything they're doing. It's like, oh my god, this absolutely isn't cool. I need to get the fuck out of here. Let me try and help this guy escape because he's my best chance of getting out of here. He didn't try to help Poe escape because he's like, oh, this is the right thing to do. He's like, this is my best ticket out of this goddamn base. Please get me out of here. And then he's thrust into this story again that he's heard a million times, and he tries to live the story. And Finn shows what happens when normal people try to live that story. Like, you give a normal person a lightsaber, he's not going to be able to stand to anybody and just be a master duelist and shit. He's going to flounder around. And he's going to get really scared and want to go back to some semblance of normalcy. But it's only when the stuff that he's threatened, that he loves and cares about, is threatened, that he has to overcome his fear. And in that moment, that normal person actually becomes a hero. That's why I think Finn's in it.
I definitely think it plays into the story or the messages we get in the next film, which is that where they kind of hint at the idea that anyone can be a Jedi, or I guess a Force user.
Mm-hmm.
This one kind of plays with the idea that anyone can be a hero. Anyone can step up and face their fears and become part of something bigger. And that's definitely what they do with Finn. So, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that, I guess to follow that up then how do you want to see his character evolve in this final film that comes up? Like, where do you want to see him go?
I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about where he goes in episode 8, but at the end of the day, it's like, he becomes a person he goes from a person who's scared, to a person who wants to do whatever he can to help the greater collective out. And then in episode 8, we see him dipping into a lot of the negative feelings that surrounds being a soldier in war. And you have other characters who got so much unnecessary hatred. What the fuck are you guys even doing? But you have another character who shows him the error of that way and says, it's not in trying to destroy what you hate that we're going to be successful. It's wanting to defend what you love. It's keeping yourself in the midst of this war. Remember what you're fighting for. It's not to destroy, but to save. And so he kind of gets a reality check in episode 8. So I'm very interested into what they're going to do with him. I don't really have any predictions because his story is very fresh to me, at least in this setting. So I'm just really interested in seeing what they do with him. What do you think they'll do with him?
Man, I'm not really sure because he's really kind of been all over the place a little bit. Like here you have him be scared, and he kind of grows into this like more like assertive heroic role. In the middle film, we'll talk about it more next week. But that one kind of goes all over the place with him, where he's learning more about how the world operates and how the lines of good and evil are kind of blended. Mm-hmm. So I need to know more about the overall narrative of the film before I can guess to what his role in it's going to be, because they've been very quiet about what episode 9 is going to be about. Like, they've given us hints, but nothing concrete as to this is what you can expect. So, and we haven't really seen him more than just a couple seconds in a trailer, so I couldn't begin to guess, well, the exact idea where they can go. What I'd like to see, though, maybe, is him taking a more commanding position. I mean, we see him grow, we see him learn. Now that he's got the knowledge, now that he's got the assertiveness, let's see him put it to the test and maybe command something, lead something, become bigger. The whole thing's maybe about becoming part of a bigger picture. Let's see him take a head spot at that bigger picture.
Yeah, I'd love to see that as well. I think that's a good prediction, because like he's definitely grown into more of a heroic figure, and he's definitely learned a lot throughout the course of the 2 movies. So him being able to take like a stand as like one of the leaders of the rebellion, like it would definitely make a lot of sense. I'm interested in seeing that.
And it would also go to show the evolution of what power should look like in the world, where people can go from being a janitor on the Death Star to being the leader of the rebellion. Because right now in real life, such trajectory is not very likely.
Please don't bring realism into my Star Wars. Don't bring realism into my space opera about space Nazis, please.
So we're at 120. I'm going to try to hit the last 2 questions here. I know I have a few more, but...
I'm so sorry.
No, this is probably one of my more favorite ones to listen to you on. This is good. Okay. Now we see an era removed from the world of the Jedi Order, where the Jedi and the Force are little more than mythological figures in history. how does this play out in this film, and what does it say about religion and belief as a whole?
Oh, shit. Like,
smacking you with that heavy one.
Be like, yeah, we're at 1:20, so let's go ahead and try to hit these two. What do you think about religion, Ryan? Like, what the fuck? Just condense it into a 2-minute soundbite. Okay. I think that the concept of religion and like the philosophies of the Force were initially very far removed from the original trilogy. Because aside from the Force users, you really didn't have anybody who believed in all that hocus pocus mumbo jumbo.
Q and Han Solo.
Right. Even Han Solo, yeah. I think they strike a similar chord in Episode 7, where like all you hear about it are myths. You don't have people that actually believe in the Force, except for random, like, ancient cantina ladies that just so happen to held on to Luke Skywalker's sword that he dropped in a fucking, like, how'd you get that? No, we don't need to.
It's a story for another time, right?
It is a story for another time. But I think it plays out in a similar way to Episode 4, but I think really what they do different is Episode 8, because from that standpoint, we start to see it spread out to more common people, because the Force isn't just about these solitary chosen ones that are just somewhere in the fucking galaxy, and if you have this power, then you have to find this one particular teacher that's hidden on a planet far away, and you'll become the legendary chosen one. But they kind of bring it down to a more common level, where they're like, guys, literally, like, anybody can be a Jedi. The Force is all about life. And anywhere there is life, there is the Force. And there are going to be people who are more connected to it. It could be you, it could even be you. So you see the general philosophy of the Force start to spread to more common people in Episode 8. I think it's pretty much at the same place as it was in Episode 4 for this movie, but Episode 8 is where it starts to expand.
Gotcha. I really like that take. Okay, last question. I'm skipping a couple because we're running really long. And it was unintentional, but I love this conversation. I like that we've gotten to the big conversations with these last two, and I think we're going to hit that really hard going into the final films. Mm-hmm. So, really excited. Last question. What are your thoughts on the departure of Han Solo from this series?
I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
It was visually, to me, it was visually, like, really well framed and well established. I pointed out when we were watching it, as they get closer and as the blade gets ready to pierce Solo, you see the sunlight in the background fading, which is part of the plot element. It's part of the plot elements where if once the sun's down, the laser's ready, but at the same time, it's also like a thematic thing. Whereas the darkness outside is taking over, the darkness of Kylo Ren's taking over, and that's leading to the imminent death scene. So, framing wise, thematically, everything, it's a really well done, really well shot scene. Everything about that is great. I like just visually how it looked. Narratively, I don't know if I'm as hip on it. I don't know. What do you think on that one?
Ooh, I wanna ask why narratively you don't like it. I'm gonna like go on a whole thing, but narratively, why didn't you really dig it?
I mean, I don't hate it. I'll say that much, but I don't know. I feel like either the build-up was too obvious for it, and I kind of saw it coming, and so it just felt very like, oh, okay, well, I'm not surprised, or it felt like it was unearned, that there wasn't enough set up to make it, like, a big enough deal.
You can't have your cake and eat it, too!
It's perfectly fine to have a cake and want to eat it, Ryan. You shut up. I don't know how you can not eat a cake you already have.
Oh, my God. Okay, you. Okay. Okay. Starting with your original point. Earlier, I had said that the screenwriters were damn near like talking directly to the audience throughout a good portion of this movie, and the biggest thing that spoke like that to me was the scene of Han Solo, of Han's death. If you are paying attention, you can see like it is plain as day that they are putting this together. Like they spend a good 3 minutes setting this up. And it's just like, guys, it's coming. Like, I mean, I could walk you through the scene. Like they get there, Kylo walks off by himself. They tell him to search this big place for him, and he goes out in the middle of a bridge by himself. Han looks and sees him out there just alone, and he gets a determined look on his face. I'm just like, okay, guys, this is it. Like Leia already told him, if you see our son, bring him home. This is gonna be it, guys. We're coming to it. And he steps out onto the catwalk. He calls him by his name. He looks, and we get a wide shot where it's Kylo in the midst of darkness, and Han by a bridge leading out to him over the chasm. Then you get your two protagonists to step out and open the door above, and the light shines in. It literally illuminates the bridge. It illuminates the way back for Ben Solo to come back to the lights.
Like I said, visually, it all comes together.
They're just they are literally painting the scene for you. Like, all right, this is what we're saying here. They're like plastering it on the walls. This is the meaning of this shot. And he comes to him, and he's trying to pull him back. And he says, I know what I have to do, but I don't think I'm strong enough. Will you help me? He takes the sword with him, and the light dies. And as soon as the light dies, everybody knows what's coming. They know what's coming. They've all braced, and he gets stabbed. Now,
like I said, I don't know if it's too subtle or not subtle enough. I'm torn on this one so much.
I mean, I think Han dying was necessary for the series because I know Harrison Ford didn't want to do more. I know he didn't want to do. He's like, I will only come back if you kill me. That's it. Like I will come back if I die. Like, so I know he didn't want to do this for 2 more movies. I absolutely know this. But it also represents a point of no return for Kylo. That I think that's necessary. And really to spark the duel that comes between Rey and Kylo at the very end. Because throughout the course of the movie, you have Han really getting closer to Rey, almost in a parent-child relationship, because he's really liking this girl. She knows a lot. She's very smart on her feet, and he's starting to care about this girl, kind of like a surrogate to the child he already lost. And Han's death really sets them at odds. They were already going to be fighting, but that was really what caused it.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like when Obi-Wan died. And that's what set Luke and Vader at odds first.
Yeah. Now, again, in the EU, there is a similar story where essentially Han has twins, a boy and a girl, Jaina and Jason. I'm sorry, Jason and Jaina. Yes, because boy and girl. Anyway,
I think those names sound familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jason is tempted to become a Sith Lord in order to put the galaxy in order. Like his reasons are actually very well developed and very well defined. And his turning point is killing a beloved family member. It's not killing Han. It's not killing like one of his parents. Jason's turning point is actually killing Mara Jade Skywalker, Luke's wife.
Ooh. Oof.
And once that happens, he actually he gets that break point where he actually becomes Darth Caedus. Like he goes full into the dark side. He has access to powers that he'd never had before because it was the point of no return. He was all in. And as a point of that, Luke realized that he couldn't kill Jason because if he did, it would be revenge for his wife, and it wouldn't be out of setting the galaxy right. So he knew he couldn't actually fight him. So it actually set him up that the only person who could fight Jason was his twin sister. So they harken back a lot to the EU for this setup, and I really applaud them for that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think because of all of these things, Han's death was necessary, and I think they handled it very, very well. Because if you just kill one of the beloved 3 protagonists from the original story out of nowhere, you would have so much fucking backlash. So they had to hold the fan base's hand while this necessary act had to be done.
And we're going to see how well they handle that in this next episode coming up. And in the one afterwards, because, there's a reason why that person's not coming back. We'll talk about more of that next week, probably. But if you want to talk to us about killing your childhood, you should email us or text or message us on the Tumblrs, the Twitters, the Facebooks. Tell us why we killed your childhood and why you're sad that the Ninja Turtles have noses, or why Han Solo is dead. Or...
Wait, the Ninja Turtles have noses now? The fuck?
Did you see the Michael Bay?
No!
Yeah. That's a thing that happened. Yeah, email us, or you can email us at, Ryan, what can I email us at?
The email is, the fucking Ninja Turtles have noses? What? I'm sorry, it's evacstation@gmail.com. What the hell?
Look it up, kids. It's nightmare fuel. I have heard, though, that they're gonna be... I've seen some leaked footage that might be the new Sonic for the new Sonic movie. It doesn't look like it's as bad as it was before. It still looks bad, but not as bad as before. Let's rank this movie from 7 hedgehogs out of... From a scale of 1 to 7 hedgehogs, Ryan, where are we...
God damn it.
From gold to silver, platinum...
I'll give it a chaos control ranking. How about that?
Oh man, I love the chaos. 7 chaos emeralds. It's got all 7. It's super Star Wars.
Okay.
You can tell this podcast has gone on too long when we're talking about Sonic the fucking Hedgehog.
My bad, guys. We're on 90 minutes. My bad. All right. Damn it. I really like this movie.
we talked a lot of sugar about this one.
I really like this movie, and this is ultimately my dilemma with this movie, because I think this movie was really good. I think it was very intentional in the things that it did, and in the points that it wanted to make. It executed on them. It did what it set out to do very, very well, and it was the first step in a saga that was primed to start from a really good place and go to a different story. But so many people have so much hate on it, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm being too biased towards it, if I just want to like it. Can I hear your opinion first, just to make sure that I'm not just like pouring sugar on it, because I really liked this movie.
Absolutely. I don't mind. I really like this movie as well. I think the hatred, like we've discussed, is a little out of line. I think some of it, portions of it, are valid, but that's art. That's criticism. It's subjective, objective. It's one of those objectives where
it's something objective. It's something objective.
It's subjective. That's what it is. You're entitled to kind of believe however you want. If you don't like The Force Awakens, that's cool. If I want to like it, that's great. If that guy over there wants to say it's the abomination of Satan and Hitler's baby, then sure, he can too. He's crazy, but he can do it. The point is, my ranking is gonna probably be gold, because it's not Empire Strikes Back good. There's a level of awe and mysticism and majesty that is behind Empire Strikes Back that has yet to be hit, I think. Mm-hmm. This film comes close. It does a lot of things really well, but like we said, there's not a imposing antagonistic force behind it. There's no Darth Vader to it. There's something missing that's keeping it from being the top tier. But I do think it hits a lot of things really well. It's a good deconstruction. It's visually one of the most impressive Star Wars films, without a doubt. And it sets up for some really interesting ideas down the road. So I think this is definitely a really solid start to this new trilogy, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from here.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, because my initial thought was to give it a gold too, but I needed to hear another opinion. I respect your opinion very much. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me fanboying out over Star Wars. So yes, I will join you with that gold.
Guys, did you hear that? Ryan respects my opinion. Someone respects my opinion! Well, this has been a podcast. We're at an hour 36. I'm tempted to go for just a few more minutes to get to an even 140, but that's ridiculous. So, thank you everybody for listening. Sorry to talk your ear off. I'm going to warn you, next week is probably going to be just as long, because
probably.
Good Lord, Last Jedi has a lot of baggage on it, and I don't even know how Rise of Skywalker is going to go. I have no idea.
Episode 9. Sorry.
So thank you for listening. Tune in next week for your Christmas special of Last Jedi, because, well, that's all we got for you. And we'll see you after the credits.
Bye.